I'm not sure how many of you guys follow how closely what's going on with college sports, NCAA, and how they, for forever, took advantage of collegiate athletes, so that these universities and athletic departments at these universities make hand over fist millions upon hundreds of millions of dollars, which go to coaches, professional coaches who are adults, who aren't in college, but they make millions upon millions of dollars. And when that was the attempt was to remedy that with NIL deals, where top athletes or these folks involved can get paid to a certain degree, so that they don't just waste their athletic prowess in college. And majority of them don't make it to the pros, or they're in sports that don't have a huge professional league where you can make hundreds of millions of dollars. When people had the opportunity to potentially get some level of compensation for all of their work, um, it changed up, and Donald Trump wants different kinds of controls over it. I know we only have a couple minutes, but I did want to show you guys his rambling answer as to the control he wanted to have over college sports and NIL.
They're going to also be working on college football in terms of what happened. It's a mess. What happened? It's what they're doing with college football, and the fans are upset about it, and players are being taken from team after team and being traded around like playing cards, and a lot of money's passing and nobody knows what's happening. So these people behind me are going to be very much involved in figuring that whole thing out and working on it and trying to bring some sanity to that incredible, not only the football, college sports, very, very bad for women. Very bad what's happening, because now all of a sudden there's no women that are able to get the money that they're talking about. You know, it seems to be going mostly to football, some basketball, and women's sports are being totally decimated. We know that, Annika, you know, with this. It's all going into football, and some to basketball, and everything else is being left behind. And women are being left behind, and lesser sports are being left behind, and the Olympics is being decimated, because that was like training for the Olympics, and now we're not going to have that many of those sports left. The smaller sports, they're almost going to be completely wiped out. This is crazy what's going on. We banned men from competing in women's sports, and last week the United States Olympic and Paralympic Committee announced that they will be complying with that order, so there won't be men playing in women's sports. That seemed like an easy one. They say it's an 80-20 issue during the campaign. I said, no, that's not 80-20. That's 97-3. Maybe it's 98-2, perhaps. And last Thursday, we terminated third-party pay-for-play schemes in collegiate athletics, and effectively we saved college sports, but now we have to heal it, because it's really a mess. It's a real mess. This council will play an important role in shaping these new policies and ensuring that we preserve the American athletic tradition for many generations to come.
This guy was there to talk about the. This guy was there to talk about the presidential athletic, whatever the hell that thing was, when we were in fifth grade and we had to do it. Um, but instead, he went on to talk about all the deals and the changes he wants to make, this executive order over the NIL deals. But somehow he found himself talking about he's saving women's sports, which there's an aspect of his executive order over the NIL deal which does affect women's sports. But because his brain works only in political hate and division, that connected to him to go on this rant about how he's kept men out of women's sports, because there was this rampant nature of people running through women's sports that was destroying it because of the two trans athletes that we've discovered were in sports. After that, then he has to talk about how he saved it because it was a training ground for the Olympics. And now, though, those committees have vowed to not allow what hasn't been happening. It's a pretty easy vow to make. But again, he has to congratulate himself and take credit for something that wasn't a problem until he started bitching and complaining about a problem that didn't exist. So he uses that moment for that and says he saved college sports. I'm going to run through what it is that he did, what that executive order was talking about, and how it changed things with college sports, because the NCAA, since they were basically using college kids that played these sports that brought in massive amounts of money and hoarded it for themselves and treated these folks like free labor, since that had been happening since forever, Donald Trump had to step in and say, let me throw you guys a bone again because they've been complaining about this whole NIL deal thing, which it has its issues, by the way. It needs to be adjusted in a way that actually works more even for these kids, but definitely not to give more power back to the predatory nature of these athletic departments that make tons of money on it, but give $100 million contracts to coaches. So this is what it does. It prohibits third parties from engaging in direct pay for play payments to athletes, which the order deems improper. And right now, school boosters can sign players to multi-million-dollar NIL deals that are widely viewed as a workaround to directly paying players to attend a certain university. Trump's order says players should only earn, quote, fair market value for a legitimate service to a third party, such as a brand endorsement. Adidas, Nike, you've seen some of these college athletes in these Gatorade commercials. Advocates for athletes say that this would impose a cap on their earnings. So, really fast, in case, again, some of y'all don't know, since the beginning of time, athletic departments and third parties have been paying certain athletes to go to certain universities to play for those universities and promote their athletic departments and their winnings and their championships and their TV deals and all the money that they can make off of collegiate athletes. I was a track athlete in college. Two of my best friends who ran track with me as well were all like, I guess, football size looking guys. I was the smallest of all three of us. And we walked, the football practice field was right across from the track stadium. I'm not lying to you. Three of us were walking, and this random old dude walked up on us and said, "Oh, you guys play ball?" We were wearing USC track gear. It was pretty prominent in front of us. And he goes, "Oh, you guys play ball?" Like football, because it's one of the major sports there, obviously. And we said, "No, we run track." And he goes, "Well, I'm sure you guys could, return some kicks or something like that." And in that collective moment, all three of us sat there and said, why is this old man trying to talk to us about what we should be doing as far as athletics? Because all of us had played football in the past, and we know whether or not we can play football and what we could do. But he's going to suggest us what it is that we could do. And it started finally computing to me. And he goes, well, you guys could maybe return some kicks. And what that is a third party that would be looking to recruit athletes that are potentially faster than maybe some of those football players, because they're track guys I just ran into, to maybe return some kickoffs because we need some more wins under our belt. And he might have had a kickback of who knows, $5, $10, $50,000. Who knows? But that happened to certain athletes, and the athletes got punished for it. And those boosters and those people who came along to hand off some of their money to athletes who are struggling in college because they're not allowed to do other things when they're on a scholarship for the school, basically a contract where they're working for the school to make them tons of money where they get nothing back. He said, I'll give you guys some money to return some kicks. And I said, this is how it works. That's how it used to work. And now that there's more of an organization behind it, NCAA doesn't like that as much. They can't work the black market of using athletes the same way that they used to, and they need to fix it. Here's another thing that this executive order does. There's also protections on scholarships for non-revenue sports, requiring schools to maintain or increase scholarships for such sports, depending on the revenue of their athletic departments. This will be a measure largely to protect Olympic sports and women's sports from potential decreases in funding as more money goes to revenue generating athletes in football and basketball, two of the major revenue generating sports that we'll see. Now, like I said, there's issues with NIL, and this potentially was one of them that they're trying to remedy. So, with the NIL deals and with all the money now being even more focused from the universities, the way that formerly boosters and people doing illegal activities that they never got caught for, that they tried to do with me and a couple of my buddies, now that the schools could be focused more on it, they know that they're sending money in certain directions for certain sports even more than they did before, and that would harm some of these women's sports or some of the smaller named sports that don't get the kind of attention that basketball and football get, say the water polos of the world, the tennises, all those sports. So it does help them. So there's an aspect that, I mean, I didn't read deep into the whole executive order that could actually mean something. But the main thing is to give more control right back to these institutions that are using kids. So again, that potentially is a decent part. Here's more. Now, a clarification from the National Labor Relations Board on the employment status of athletes quote, that will maximize the educational benefits and opportunities provided by higher education institutions through athletics. That's the clarification that they're making from the Labor Relations Board to make sure the kids are getting their education. So during the Biden administration, the NLRB issued a memo stating that certain college athletes should be considered employees. Now, that memo now has been rescinded, and now Trump is seeking to codify athletes as non employees, which would almost certainly take away any opportunity that they have to collectively bargain with schools, taking more power away from the athletes that just got some power. And the power has allowed them to then transfer without the same kinds of barriers that the NCAA put in place. Because beforehand, say you're playing for the University of Alabama and you're not getting much playing time, or you don't like the coach, or something happened and you want to maybe go back home. Maybe you're from Virginia, you want to go play over there. So you transfer, but in order to do that, you have to sit out for a full year. This is the previous rules. You have to sit out for a full year and lose out on that opportunity in order to then come back and maybe not have the same kind of momentum and all that. So after that was taken away and kids have been transferring year to year to different universities, that's frustrated fans, coaches, athletic departments that lose people the same way professional athletes can potentially move in different ways through their professional sports. It was getting a little bit too much freedom there for folks, because what we like is having control over these student athletes. More things that this executive order is looking to do. So protections for the NCAA from lawsuits by athletes is what he wants to add to it. The NCAA has been lobbying for these protections for many years, as many of the big changes in college athletics have come as the result of these antitrust lawsuits. Protections against further court cases would allow the NCAA to enforce its rules on issues such as transfers, as I was talking about, and third-party payments without fear of them being upended by another court ruling. They want their control back. And if we're punishing athletes for moving and transferring based off of whatever reasons that they have, we got to get that back. There's probably some tweaks and changes that can happen to the NIL process and the way that folks get paid and how it takes money from other sports and aspects of the university. But I did notice someone say this in the chat. There's one way to clear this whole thing up with the scholarships and using athletes and all that, is to stop having this policy that we have in higher education, where these universities are charging every student 50, 60, 70, 80, 90, $100,000 to go to school, so that there's these incentives for them to get scholarships, so they won't have to pay as much or none at all if they happen to get good enough scholarships, to avoid those exorbitant costs that literally no one can afford. So you put them in this hole: go to college, go to college, go to college. Hey, be an athlete, be an athlete, be an athlete. But in order to do all that, you have to be beholden to us based off of our exemption from you having to pay us hundreds of thousands of dollars, and maybe that slight chance that you'll go pro. The system is always geared towards the richest and the most powerful to have more riches and more power.